Good afternoon. Welcome to Nigeria Now. Today being the 19th of July 2024, your afternoon program where we look at some of the happenings in the country and then we bring it on the show so that you and I can actually discuss some of it and do well to drop your comment on Facebook and YouTube because we are an important part of the program. I'm Seda Elisha and I'm doing the program with Rachel Tansey. Good afternoon, Rachel.
Afternoon, Sarah.
All right, we have quite a number of interesting issues we'd love to discuss. At last, Tinubu has approved the 70,000 naira as the new minimum wage. And Rachel, just yesterday,
Just yesterday.
you and I were discussing that they will be meeting
Yes.
yesterday, and I was like, an obnoxious amount is going to be 65,000.
Mm.
And it seems as if shortly after our discussion,
Yeah.
that was when the 70,000 naira minimum wage was being announced. And of course, mixed reaction, which is expected. And then, of course, you and I can say we're not surprised, but a number of civil servants are surprised. Because I'm just imagining the likes of pensioners are hoping that they'll be taken along on this new minimum wage. A normal businesswoman is hoping that they will increase higher than that so that she can actually have some gain from the produce she's selling. So we have quite a number of things when you look at this, and then we're seeing that members of the House of Reps, in a way of showing their love to Nigerians, are saying they will be collecting 50% of their salary for the next 6 months. So that's starting from July till December. So from next year they'll be having back their everything. But then looking at this new minimum wage and then looking at the prices of goods, I mean, you and I have taken our time over and over looking at certain commodities that are essential to Nigeria. And I remember you saying that what civil servants are asking for is not a want.
Yeah.
It's mostly a need because it's
Yeah.
crucial. They're talking about their medical expenses, they're talking about transportation, even though we're saying the federal government is saying they'll provide about 36 CNG buses. And we've been hearing that since the first quarter of the year, and then we're almost getting to the third quarter or almost the last quarter for the year, and then we're yet to hear anything about that. But I mean, this is what it is. I mean, at last we have a new minimum
We
wage.
do. So, like, for me, this minimum wage, it's good that we have come to an end of it, and Nigerians know their fate, civil servants know their fate, and we can move past it. But I think Labour gave false hope to Nigerians.
So it's more like they gave in too easily.
Yes, they gave in too easily. Aside from that, the false hope is how high they started their bid, just for us to see them settling for something less than 100,000. 70,000 seller with our exchange rate, with the price of commodities in the market, is not good enough. We saw an infographic in the morning seller where we are looking at a minimum wage currently of $45, and we are looking at a minimum wage that cannot buy a bag of rice and all of that. For me, is the outcome. Not that it wasn't expected, of course, it was expected, but it was disappointing from the side of Labour. Imagine if Labour has started their bid from 150. I don't think Nigerians, civil servants, will be disappointed that it ended up at 70. That would be like half of it. But for the NLC to start from way over 600, the most recent is 250, and not even get half of it, 50% of it, or 45% of it, it's kind of disappointing because there is that civil servant out there hoping that the new minimum wage would be 100,000 or a little bit above it. There's somebody out there, a lot of people out there hoping and saying, I just hope that the NLC will be able to stand their ground and get something that will make sense in regarding the minimum wage. So I think they threw too far, couldn't keep up with it, and I believe that a lot of people out there are disappointed concerning the minimum wage. For some of us, it's not new. It's not news.
We're not surprised.
We could tell and know, looking at the outcomes of events in the past, from the body language from the federal government and all of that, we know that this was going to be the minimum wage eventually. But then I just hope, right, that we begin to see now minimum wage out of the way, we begin to see a conducive environment for businesses to thrive more than any other thing. I think this is where I am waiting to see. And the market, inflation should become more stable and better. Now that there is a minimum wage that is not good enough, the real work now starts with the federal government making sure that people can be able to afford some standard of living. I think this is where the work begins, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day if we have pharmaceuticals rising in prices. We're looking at 150% increase, 200%. It doesn't make sense if we're looking at this minimum wage. We are seeing how, why is the Central Bank of Nigeria refusing to trade with Bureau de Change operatives, making exchange rate to go high, and now that they have agreed to open, is beginning to stabilize. We saw this at the start of the week where the BDCs are saying there was a recent 122 million transaction that was done by the Central Bank of Nigeria, but they were not included, they were sidelined out of it. Now, shortly after this complaint, we're announcing that the Central Bank of Nigeria have decided to operate with them, giving them the window of not more than 1.5% in profit and only 20,000 and all of that. And then with this action, we are beginning to see that there is some certain level of our currency gaining some value. And the question is the Central Bank of Nigeria intentionally sabotaging the naira from gaining some value, or why are you refusing to transact with these operatives that make, to some extent, stability in our exchange rate? Because this now falls back to what the minimum wage can be able to do for a common man. If our minimum wage in terms of dollar is not up to a $50, we are a very poor country.
Extremely.
We are extremely poor. So why are you not doing what it takes at the Central Bank of Nigeria? If our currency can gain some value, then we can see that our minimum wage is increasing when it comes to its value in dollar currency and all of that. So I just hope that we don't just stop there. Let all the work around making this 70,000 be valuable to the masses take place, so that in the end of the day, it will not just be minimum wage, but a minimum wage that can afford a living.
Yeah, of course, be able to meet up some of the demands of Nigerians.
Yes.
And you see, in the morning, we also saw where the operative private sector are saying they will need help coming from the federal government to be able to pay this. And we will recall that they were in support of 62,000 naira from the very onset, saying anything beyond that they will not be able to afford. I mean, yesterday when this new minimum wage was announced, a number of core members were downcast because they were hoping for something better so that it can actually reflect on their own, allowances that is coming, because we know that definitely they will also be taking along in all of that, especially for those who are in states that the state do not give them anything to add up to that. So we can see that almost everybody in Nigeria was depending on what the new minimum wage would be. So whether you accept it directly or indirectly, definitely everybody was going to benefit. But just like you said, it's beyond what the new minimum wage would be. How strong would the strength of this money be equivalent to when you go to the market to purchase something? We saw how much a bag of rice is. For that place is 86,000. So that is to say, if you are collecting 70,000 now, you just buy maybe half bag of rice. How about rent? How about hospital bills? How about transportation? All of these things are supposed to be considered. But the point that the government makes, the fact that they'll be reviewing this and then, every 3 years. And I remember the concern you raised, what makes them feel that in the next 3 years, the president's attention will be on the new minimum wage and not on his campaign. But from the body language, Richard, it seems to look as if the government seems to be hopeful that this 6-year single term might work. That is the only way that this 3 years review will actually make sense. But if not, I don't think that we'll see that. But let's just hope that the government will prove Nigerians wrong, because this is what Nigerians succeeded. Now, we see that in the education sector. Yesterday, we just gave more like a tip of what is happening concerning. We know that JAM have already started releasing some of the admission dates for 2024, 2025. What the new cutoff mark is. As of yesterday, we saw the Minister of Education rather saying the fact that the new age for admission is 18 years. But we're saying that, after some back and forth coming from stakeholders, ministers especially, are saying that, we should go back to the 16 years because a number of people who sat down for the JAM, the matriculation, are actually hopeful that they'll get admission. So actually telling them until they're 18, that is to say that they will have to stay at home. But if you ask for my personal opinion concerning this, I mean, the 2 years should be enough for you to get some skills. And then when you're 18, you should be. So I feel it wouldn't have been totally out of point if we say 18. Yes, it is, but they're saying from next year JAM will take in that the 18 years consideration for those who will be getting admission into this. But then we're seeing that the cutoff mark, which is what is actually bothering me a lot, is the fact that we're seeing that they have reduced the cutoff mark to 140 for varsities and then 100 for polytechnics and college of education. And I recall, I mean, Rachel, there was a time that we were striving to get 200 and above. In fact, if you score 180, then you are shy to tell your friends and people because it looks more like you were dull not to be able. And meanwhile, then we weren't even using some of these gadgets. So it was manually, you get your pencil and you make sure you shape the answers properly so that you will not be mistaking any answer for. But then we see that it seems for every year, the educational standard keep dropping because we keep seeing JAM more like compromising certain things that are meant to be. In fact, when you even go down to some of even our textbooks right now from primary to secondary school, you get to see that it's as if they're trying to simplify certain things, more like making students to be lazy to study, or I really cannot fix my finger on what really it is. But then concerning this cutoff point, I mean, are you saying that 140 for somebody who wants to study medicine and engineering? Is that what we're saying? Because you just can't help but wonder what is the idea behind JAM reducing the cutoff point for admission into all of these tertiary institutions.
Sally, when I think of our education system and how it's being structured, it gives me a headache, to be honest, because we have a lot of loopholes that I don't even know how we are going to start filling it in, and where we know what needs correction. The challenge is, where do we start? How do we start? Where and how? Now, if you're moving that, for example, you have to be 18 to get to the university. For those who will finish at the age of 16, 15, do you have any plans for them to stay occupied to that period before they get to 18? Or do you just want to have idle youths? We know how reading and studying is. When you stop, you begin to forget. It's a continuous thing. Why we think our math teachers are very good is because they teach it every single year. They've been doing it for the last 10, 15 years. Automatically, they become good. It's the same thing with education. Now, why are we even having students that are finishing with such very young, tender age? We have parents on the other side taking 8-year-olds to JSS1, 9-year-olds to JSS1, for example. And within 6 years, this person is 15 and is done. Why are we not having certain standards for when there should be an age group, an age range when it comes to a certain class?
True.
People that are going to be found in this junior secondary and senior secondary, so that give or take, you have people within and not less than the age of 16 to 18 finishing secondary school. But this becomes a problem because we have people finishing secondary school at the age of 14 and 15. And it is the reason, Sally, I believe, that JAM has no option but to keep reducing the standard, its cutoff point and its standard. Why? Because whether we like it or not, it's not everybody that is a genius. It's not everybody that is having a very high IQ. We have to put all of these things. What is the average performance of a 14-year-old, of a 15-year-old, of a 16-year-old? There is the level that their brain can accumulate regardless of how bright a student is. It's not everybody that has the same IQ standard, but what is the average? What is obtainable? So it's beyond looking in our curriculum. There are so many factors when it comes to education, and we have an education sector that is doing little or nothing to put all of these things in check. We will continue to cut down. Okay, I've said this before. You write JAM, you write WAEC, you write NECO, you write every other, and we are yet to start inventing things. Who are we deceiving? And while we have other educational systems that are leading in the world, you just write one examination and you're off to your tertiary institution, and you're going and you're leading and you're inventing and creating things, and we are here writing NECO, WAEC, JAM, NAPTEP, Unity, whatsoever, all of these examinations, and we are still struggling. We are still struggling with our students performing. What does this message tells you? That our educational system need a revamp. That we need to look beyond our curriculum. The test, with types of tests we're giving, because an examination is still a test, are they appropriate? Are we putting in other factors in place, age factors, and all of that? Everybody is not a genius. What is the average performance of students in a specific age grade and group? What is expected of them? What can they accumulate and what can they not? Because you can remember when we were in secondary school, we were all the same age. We barely had people who were 14 or 15. They were a few, but you could count them. And they still did better to a large extent. They were not performing well, if we're going to be honest. Exactly. They were not. If you could remember those very, very young ones, they didn't perform as well as those who were moving according to their age and their class. That is a fact out there. There are few people that are juniors. I will not stop saying that, but they are 1 in a million. So how would you put your standard based on 1 in a million, for example? So I just hope that we are ready and willing to do the work in Nigeria, because every problem just brings out the gap, the things that we're neglecting and we're leaving, and we are not confronted. The work that is supposed to be put in, we are not putting in. We would rather prefer to come out and reduce the cut-off point than addressing the issue from the root.
And you know, one thing we're forgetting, especially with the educational sector, the fact that even when you reduce the cut-off point, when they get to the tertiary institution, how is their performance? For example, someone who have to study medicine, you see eventually he or she will have to drop medicine to study something.
We've seen that happen.
Why? Because he or she cannot adapt. And that is where the issue of the age limit that you're talking about. I clearly remember the way, I'm happy they're reviewing the curriculum for September for those in secondary school. The reason why I'm happy about secondary school is the fact because that will give you an age. From primary school, it's expected that when you're 6, most ideally you're in primary 1.
Yes.
Back was then we had primary 6. Right now, mostly stops at primary 5, except for those who have all these American standard education and British being, merged into it. And that's when you have even up to maybe C7, 8, and 10. That is even GS1 and all of that. Now, by age 6, when you're in primary 1, it's expected that at age 11,
that's
when
you're going to GS1.
11, 12, you're in GS1.
Exactly.
So it's expected at around age 16, 17, you have graduated from secondary school.
Exactly.
So in between that time, before we have the JAM releasing, you must have clicked 18 or about to be 18.
Yes.
Proper age. You get there, you're strong, if not because of the way our education here is, because of especially our public varsities, you have strike. If you're going for a 4-year course, it's expected, 19, 20, 21, 22, you are done. Medicine by 23 at most. If you have a peripatetic course, 25 you're done. We have young doctors.
We do.
But reverse is the case, and just like you said, it still boils down to the fact that we do not want to do the job.
We don't.
You prefer to keep reducing, compromising, and doing things, and we're not helping ourselves because we can't even rub shoulders with kids of that age outside. No wonder we go there and then we become a laughing stock. Why? Because we refuse to do the job that's expected. If you be honest, there were times that we even had other students or all of this exchange program. You'll be surprised to hear, okay, you are 15 and here the guy or the lady you are doing an exchange program is maybe 18 or 20. Then we laugh at them, but they were going and you see that they're performing better. And so just like you're saying, honestly, we need to to actually review this. I am not the minister, neither are you the minister,
Yes,
but
sir.
all we can do here is the fact that to draw the attention of the government to the fact that, you know what, we need to do what is expected.
Yeah.
Are we against, I mean, student going to tertiary institution?
Of course not, yeah.
But when you go there, you should be firm, solid, ready to face whatever it is you are supposed to face there. So let's just keep our fingers crossed already. It is what it is. So by September, I mean, admission list will be out. So for those who want to go to tertiary institution, they have to wait for either a message coming from JAM through JAM admission or from the various schools. But we hope that we'll be able to do the work, because we keep saying that education is the bedrock of development in any country.
It is.
If you want to talk about development, we have to look into our educational sector, and I hope we'll do the work as
I
well.
hope so,
Well,
sir.
Rachel, thank you for doing this.
You're
with me.
welcome.
Thank you as well to the viewers. Thank you to the crew and every other person for making this program a success. We look forward again to doing this next week. To have a lovely weekend ahead.